Hello and welcome to the Mobile Accessible Games interview series. I'm your host, Aaron Spelker. Mobile Accessible Games is a group that is focused on all things about mobile accessible gaming. And through our interview series, we interview game developers, accessibility influencers, as well as accessibility content creators. And so today we have a repeat interview with Michael Gray from NewDeath Gaming. And we're going to focus talking about a very specific game, a game that we just had the developer on as part of the interview series, Jordin Kee, the creator of Path of Adventure. And we have brought Michael in because Michael is a Path of Adventure expert, having created many playlists about all the different characters that you can play, beating all the different bosses. He's a wealth of knowledge about Path of Adventure. We've brought him on today to specifically talk about that game. So, Michael, welcome again to the interview series.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate being brought aboard. I am huge. NewDeath Gaming loves Path of Adventure and also loves Jordin Kee.
Nice. Well, excellent. We had a great conversation with Jordin last week. And in that description, we actually make reference to the walkthroughs that you've done for Path of Adventure. And so I thought it'd be great to have you on since you, again, are a wealth of knowledge of tricks and tips about Path of Adventure. So, let's just, kick it off in case somebody didn't see last week's interview and doesn't know anything about Path of Adventure. Why don't you tell people a little bit about, what is this game, Path of Adventure?
Path of Adventure is a text-based roguelike or roguelite, depending on which terminology you prefer to use. Medieval fantasy RPG with a little bit of choice mechanism thrown in for a bit of spice.
Yeah, I mean, the grand scheme of the things is you are an adventurer set out on a path to reach the, end castle at the end of the path, which has a randomly generated boss that you would fight there. And along the way, you're going to find treasure and weapons and fight different monsters and, maybe get hurt and maybe get some level ups that might hurt you or weapons that'll curse you. So there's a lot of different decisions to make along the way to see whether you can, reach the end of the path in the first place. But when you get to the end of the path, whether you're able to actually beat this final boss or not.
Exactly. And you're going to get demolished, but you're going to have fun the whole time.
Yeah. I wanted to bring Michael on specifically. I'm okay at Path of Adventure. I'm not great, probably the average, but he's talking about all his grand achievements and beating it every which way from Sunday, and I was just very impressed because it's a pretty hard game. You can get killed pretty easily if things don't go your way pretty quickly. But I wanted to bring Michael on to kind of tell everybody how to approach the game and how to up their chances of making it to the end boss and hopefully beating the end boss. So let's start at the beginning of the path, Michael. So you are in a tavern. You start deciding to go on this grand adventure. You step out the door. Right at the beginning, you are going to be met by an adventurer who has been completely destroyed by the path. And he comes walking off the path. He throws all of his spare gear down at your feet and says, "Good luck to you," as you go onto the path. And that's actually kind of a mechanism to randomly generate for you some starting gear, a weapon, a shield, whatever the case may be. And we were talking a little bit offline. I would often quit if that gear was awful. I'd just be like, "Nah, I'm just gonna restart this game. I'm not even gonna try. This is too weak of stuff. I'm not gonna get anywhere." But you take a different approach when you see kind of not so great gear thrown at your feet. Tell people what you do.
Yes. I call that when you decide you don't like your starting 3 pieces of gear or items, it's sacrilegious to reset and take better gear, because technically that doesn't stop you from resetting 100 times in a row until you get the best setup to start your adventure.
What do you
really
say?
Hard.
You say that's bad?
That's very bad, because technically there's a less than 1% chance you could receive the love spell, you could receive the marble shield, and you could receive a mana pot. You're unstoppable at that point. Nothing can kill you.
Well, this is great because you've played it a lot, so you've seen all of the different weapons and gear. So, you mentioned three things there. I think I've seen the marble shield, so I know what you're talking about there. But I mean, tell people why those three things are great.
Okay, let's say you have that. There's a really small percentage chance that Jordin Kee, and Jordin Kee's a cheeky developer. I love him to death. He says it's not a very difficult game, but you have to understand the mind of Jordin Kee. Jordin Kee is a genius, and he made a very simple premise roguelike. However, he threw in nuances that even the gods don't understand yet. There are so many microtransactional things that occur in this particular game.
And when you
That
say that, you don't mean microtransactional money wise. You're just saying many different choices and
choices, let's
yeah.
say micro choices that you can make that can over complicate or oversimplify your gameplay. So yes, in the sense that if you do something, what I meant by transactions, when you do something, when you decide to choose something, it can have no effect at the moment, but it could have a huge effect by the end of the game. It could have a detrimental or a beneficial effect. It depends. And it's really nuanced. It's very tiny. It could be something incremental as not using a spell 5 times. And it could be something like spending a little too much cash at the merchant, but it's going to matter later. Everything you do in this game matters later.
So, you get your starting gear. Um, you move, from there's kind of like 50 steps, if you will, or 50 locations before you make it to the castle. So um, let's talk about people, step one, you get your gear. You move to step two, what happens?
So yeah, you've got 50 progression path points. So level one, you're going to be at the very first, I would call it the tutorial stage. The first few progression day paths, it's basically a day. It's actually, I think on his first update was called a day, and then he moved away from that terminology and just, you just had another day. But actually each progression path is a day. I go by the original information when the game first was released. And you start off with step number one. Before you step into the path, you get your 3 pieces of randomized gear. And if you do a bit of if you do a bit of a spreadsheet, you can actually come up with pretty accurate accounting of every weapon that drops. There's a percentage for each one. If you really are into the numbers, you can pretty much nail it down. And once you get your 3 average pieces of equipment, which are really not great, but they suffice, you walk into the path. Some may walk in with a little better gear, like maybe a mana pot. Some might walk in with a straw shield and a very weak rusty dagger.
Right.
But once
So I saw lots of straw shields and rusty daggers. Um,
you
you mentioned the marble shield, which again, just
can,
a very strong shield. Um,
mhm.
takes on several different attacks. I mean, what are the things that you're looking for to say, oh, actually, this is a pretty good drop? If you get a marble shield in there, good drop. You mentioned this mana
You're
pot. What's that do for you?
so if you get a marble shield, which I am wondering if the percentage has dropped even lower, but I had received it before starting with a couple of different classes. The only class I think that can't get that by accident or by a very low probability is the assassin, because the assassin receives the poison, receives the they receive this one-shot poison damaging weapon. For some reason, I can't think of the name of it. So there is a very high, powerful assassin's weapon that you receive. It only can be used once, and then it disappears. But yeah, most every, and also the ring bearer, the last class, the final class, gets the marble shield to start their adventure. So if you do receive the marble shield to start your adventure, you're at a huge advantage. Also, if you receive the Thieves Blade or the flame sword of flames, you have a huge advantage.
So what do those do? Does it give you more attacks or stronger attacks? What do each one of those do?
So um the thieves sword or thieves blade. I know somebody's yelling at me right now because I'm getting the name wrong. So there's a the thieves blade unlocks locks, which is incredibly powerful. So you get roughly 12 unlocks. Normally, a key will cost you anywhere from 20 to 30 treasure. So the denomination in Path of Adventure is called treasure. Though I think he meant to say gold, but it just has it as treasure. So think about getting 12 keys for free, and that's what you get when you get the Thieves Blade. Normally, keys are expensive, they're random, you have to search for them, they're really hard to come by, but you get this Thieves Blade and you get to use it over and over again for free, and it's also a weapon. And it can be repaired with the sharpening stone, so it can be reused all the way up to its maximum number of 12 uses. Now, the Sword of Flames is its partner. It it allows you to save the knight who often finds himself trapped in the most strange, wonkiest things. It can also open up dark rooms and light your way through darkened dungeons. It prevents you from getting stung by scorpions and certain traps. It saves you from slime pits. It also allows you to burn snake holes, which being stung and getting poisoned by a snake is really pretty much the end of you. Also, the mosquito bite is pretty much the end of you because poison is bad. Very
It's hard
bad.
to stop it.
Yes, it is. And antidotes start at 24 treasure. That's extremely expensive. And that's, by the way, 50% of your starting first few days worth of treasure. You can't afford to spend money on an antidote. You won't make it through the game. So think about that. Almost everything poisons you in this game. And if you play in the higher level classes, monsters will actually have automatic poison capabilities, which means if they hit you, you are automatically poisoned. It also turns off the rogue's ability to self-heal. And by the way, if you're a ring bearer, the last class in the game, you already come into the game poisoned permanently. And imagine now you're double poisoned because you're now poisoned and you're already automatically poisoned because you bear the dark ring, the ring of sacrifice, the ring that removes your life force every day. The ring bearer is the Lord of the Rings Frodo. Think of ring bearer is Frodo carrying the ring of shadows or darkness to get
Draining
rid
your
of
life
it,
force. Yeah.
and it's draining your life force, driving you to the edges of darkness, basically.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not good.
That's not good. Now,
All
your
right. So we
typical. Go ahead.
oh I was just gonna say, so we have a couple starting gear. Those are good. Very rare to get those. You're gonna end up with more like, rusty dagger and straw shield and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
now
no,
you're
good
gonna have to
though.
set forth on the path and face,
Right.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
every square you're facing an enemy. Just remind
Mm-hmm.
people who haven't played it, or tell people, each
Right.
step what is happening to you.
So yeah, actually, the straw shield's quite a good start. If you get a straw shield as an assassin, I would have to say you have a chance of making it halfway through the progression path because the assassin typically doesn't start off with a shield. Now, the warrior and the rogue will almost always get the straw shield. Remember, the harder the class you play, the less likely you're going to get protective gear like shields. You're going to get all offensive or utility gear like mana pots. But if you're starting off playing the rogue or the assassin or the mage or wizard, you're likely to get a little bit of a better gear, like maybe a health pot, a mana pot. Those are really good. But as you get up to the thief and you start getting to the thief and the ring bearer, well, the ring bearer is an exception. It starts off with very powerful weaponry. It starts off with the marble shield and the sword of flames. So it starts off
Yeah,
with those.
and just to be clear, for people, each time you beat the path and you make it to the end and you beat the big boss at the end, you open up a new character type. So we were talking about the rogue and then the thief and the ring bearer. All those open up after you beat the one before that,
Correct.
or beat
But
the game with one before.
you have to beat okay, so you start off playing, so the tutorial, you play the pupil. So those of you who are not really familiar with it, play the pupil. That's the tutorial. It's free, and you can learn how the choice system works. Once you beat the pupil, which isn't required to be played, but you can practice there, you go to the rogue. The rogue is the easiest. If you beat the rogue, which means beat any of the 3 final bosses, you automatically have the warrior path open for you.
Mhm.
So these are all paths. In order to open up a new path, you must beat the previous path.
Right.
Once you beat the warrior path, you have now opened up the path of the assassin. And once you defeat the assassin, any of the 3 last bosses, you open up the path of the wizard or mage. Once you have defeated the path using the mage, you open up the path to the thief. And finally, if you ever survive the thief, you pretty much can beat anything. You open up the path to the ring bearer, which, I'm sorry, my friend, you will be there on that path for many, many iterations. But if you can beat the ring bearer, the game ends. Well, at least until Jordin Kee decides to make a Path of Adventure Part 2, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So that's it. Those
Right.
are the class.
Right. So let's say we're we got the rogue, right? We're on the rogue path. We've gotten our 3 set gear. We've step on the next square, if you will. Again, kind of explain to people, what do you see on the path as you're making your way from 1 to 50, where the castle is?
So you start off with, like you said, your first 3 pieces of gear, which could be potions, shields, weapons. It could be utility items like antidotes. It could be a sharpening stone. It could be anything, folks. And then you go to step 1. You get a little bit of a flavor story. You get a really nice bit of description, which Jordin Kee did a magnificent job with. And then you get brought into the path. Now, the first thing in the path is a tutorial. So you either fight a monster or you get free treasure, one or the other. It's 50-50. Once you get past that first one, you get the opposite. So if you fight a monster on progression path 1, you get free treasure progression path number 2. If you get free treasure, you get a monster on day 2. You need to beat the monster or you need to run from it. You have many choices. So you can run, and they get to hit you when you run, by the way, unless you dodge. Or you can throw treasure at it to escape, or you can just fight it, which I would suggest you fight it because you need the treasure, you need the experience, and you need to learn how to play the game.
Right.
So that's what happens. And each day is a random. After those first 2, by the way, everything is random. You don't know what you're going to eat, except you know for sure when you get to level 50, you reach the Castle of Wonder, which is the final level, which go, by the way, it may be just called one progression path 50. That is one huge dungeon. It is mammoth. It is 3 floors, and it is chock full of the worst creatures you can ever imagine. And they are merciless. You could fight 3 ghosts on one level. You could fight, and then you also have to fight the final boss in 3 different phases until you defeat it on the final phase, which would be the top floor of the castle. So along that path, you will fight what we call 3 progression bosses. There are a set of 3 different progression bosses. There is the first progression boss, anywhere from progression path level 18 to 20. It's not a very difficult boss, but it will challenge you if you're new to the game. Then you have to fight another progression boss from progression path point 31 to 34. This is the deal breaker. It is tough. And finally, you get one last progression boss. It is always the White Sorcerer. He comes at you at level 49, progression point 49. He is broken, he is brutal, and he is merciless. And if you can beat him, you get to move on to the Castle of Wonder. And that's where you deal with the final game dungeon, which is extensive and extremely difficult.
Now, I think it's right after, it might be right after or right before that first progression boss. The path instructs you that you're off to the Castle of Wonder, and it tells you what you're going to face there, whether it be the giant, the Hydra, or the dragon, which is very important information to know because that'll kind of decide how you want to level up your character or what kind of gear that you want to collect along the way, if you know what you're going to face at the end of the castle.
Correct. So the first release of Path of Adventure. So I do hope you ask me later about the original releases of the game, because I think it's really great that we have all this information, but the original game did not tell you who you would face on progression path point 50. You just found out when you got there.
Yeah.
When you made it to the throne room, Jordin Kee was brutal back then. And by the way, there are a lot of things that you didn't have. I'll get into them as you have time to ask me. But yeah, the game was mythically difficult. It was so hard, but it made you good to beat it. So in the original game, you did not find out who you fought until the end of the game. But in the later updates at progression point 5, roughly 4 to 6, progression point 4, 5, or 6, you were told by this very friendly NPC who will tell you her pronouns are she, her, or possibly she, her, they, them, that you are actually going to face a giant, a dragon, or a hydra, which is amazing information. So you know exactly how to create your build.
And so, tell people if you're facing, the giant versus the hydra versus the dragon, what would your build look like for each of those, or what are you trying to maximize in order to face each of those type of characters or enemies?
Oh, that's a very good question, because you do need to completely change your build. If you're dealing with the giant, you need high attack, you need high defense. Speed isn't the most important thing, but if you are really low on speed, you better have some mushrooms, and mushrooms can take care of any stats you don't have readily going. There are also these things called totems, which can be broken, which give you temporary bonuses. Also, when you're fighting the giant, it has the most hit points of any final boss. So you're in it for a long fight. You better have lots of healing potions. You better have increased your health a great deal with elixirs of growth. And you need to be ready for something that has the most defense out of any final boss. So that's it. The final boss, the giant, has the most defense, the most health, and also it's going to require you to have the longest fights, giving it more chances to hit you. So that's really rough. Now, if you're fighting the dragon is the balanced version of the final bosses. So the dragon has very high attack power, but it doesn't have as much defense as the giant does. But it also has a decent amount of attack speed. So it can overcome anybody who's making, say, a speed build, where you're basically trying to dodge attacks with high speed. The dragon can overcome that for the most part. It also has good high attack power. So for a dragon build, you're looking for really good defense. You better have your defense game good. You don't need a lot of attack to take down the dragon, but your spell game has to be really good. You've got it. You should have the love spell. You should probably have the lava spell, because you've got to get by what meager defenses the dragon does have. And you also need to really understand that the dragon being balanced is like you. It's pretty much going to have whatever you can bring to the table, it can bring to the table. So it's hard. The dragon is where most players are never going to be able to have an easy fight, because it's very well balanced. Now, finally, the hydra. It's not balanced. It's ludicrously fast. It's got +8 speed. By the way, I think I spent 34 misses trying to kill it once when I was a new player. Did not get 34 misses. 34 misses. Imagine how frustrating that is.
Yeah.
I love spelled it, which means love spell reduces its attack power. Doesn't matter. We couldn't hit each other. It couldn't hit me. I couldn't hit it. I think it was 3 hours later, I finally beat it. But
Oh my gosh.
I misunderstood how it works. Yes,
All
it
right.
was. I've been in some epic battles. So with the Hydra, it doesn't have very much defense, so you can wreck it with a high-powered weapon with a lot of attack.
But you got to
So
be fast enough to do it.
you got to be fast enough to hit it. So the Hydra, believe it or not, is your easiest final boss. Now, here's the thing, though. So the Hydra is going to make your build to get to it difficult to attain, because you've got to deal with all the wizard stuff, the white sorcerer stuff. You've got to deal with all the other progression bosses wearing you down.
Right.
The Hydra needs to be slowed down, and that requires a certain spell. So you can lower its defense, but that won't really matter because it doesn't have much defense. But what you've got to do is you've got to drop its speed or you've got to drop its attack, one or the other. If you don't, you lose because it's too fast.
Right.
So the Hydra is just one of those weird kind of gimmicks. It isn't that hard, but you've got to come in with the correct magic or you lose no matter what. It's too fast. Don't think a +4 speed's going to get you by the Hydra. You're still going to miss. All your weapons are still going to have a 23% chance of hitting it. Think about that. 23%. That's nothing. That's
Yeah.
not even a coin flip.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because you're giving me facts that I did not know at the time, and some of it I deduced as I kind of played, but I always found the Hydra the hardest because I'm like, I can't hit this thing. It is so fast, and I don't think I was ramping up my speed fast enough or reducing its speed enough to really make that an effective battle. So that was always the one when I got the Hydra. I was like, oh man, I don't want to face this thing. It's too much of a pain. Um, so that's good information to know for people to understand. If you know what you're facing, what kind of build you should be doing. As you go along the path, you were talking about, early on, you should fight the thing, any monster you see because you need the experience, you need the gold. But is there times along the path where you say, nope, I'm going to run, or no, I'm going to throw some gold at it because I need to, save getting the potential of getting hurt, because I'm, now up at level 41 or 42, and I'm almost there to the end, and I want to save, the gold's no longer valuable to me. My hit points are valuable to me. So is there kind of rules of thumbs you have there, around facing enemies along the path and when you fight and when you run or distract them?
If I'm allowed to, that's a very good question. If I could be allowed to properly quote and give credit to a famous Hollywood movie, um, do you remember the character Gordon Gecko from Wall Street?
Hmm.
That famous Hollywood movie. The line he says when giving a seminar to a bunch of young investment bankers and brokers: greed is good. However, there comes a certain point where greed is not good and you need to cut and run. Now, if you're struggling, like your health is very low, you cannot fight. You're going to have to skip the treasure. And here's where Jordin Kee is a genius, because you don't want to leave the battle. You're too bought in. You're in it. You don't want to run. Everything in you, your honor will not allow you to run. But that's the thing. If you don't run, you die.
Yeah,
However,
I see. This is why I'm bad at the game because I never run from anything. I'm like,
you're
I'll
not
just fight it. I want the experience. I want the gold. Uh, but
exactly.
but there's
This is
definitely times where I'm like,
good.
oh, that hurt me so much. That was not worth it. I should have
Perfect.
just avoided it.
So I did a spreadsheet on this. Okay, so because yes, you didn't think this was a normal nerd you were being talking, you
Seriously.
all were from. So here's the spreadsheet. If you can get away from that fight with no damage, that fight was worth it. If you get away from that fight having lost more than 5 health, it was not worth it. And obviously, if you die, the fight was definitely not worth it. Almost every fight in Path of Adventure, you need to weigh the cost of that fight and whether that fight was worth it. So take some notes. I use the Victor Reader Stream, my favorite device, and I will listen to how well I did. If I was poisoned in that fight, guess what?
Not worth
Poison is 24 treasure cost to heal. Not only that, you need to count where you find that antidote.
it. Right.
Is that antidote you use would have been better spent on the Castle of Wonder on progression point 50? So remember, everything you do in that game, as I talked about in the beginning of this interview, it's going to cost you later. You can't make the wrong decision at the wrong time. So yeah, you got to run. If it's a poison hide, excuse me, let me think of a boss that has wrecked me enough times. A poison ogre, one of the most powerful non-progression path bosses in the game, which can come in at 30 hit points and it gives you instant poison if it hits you. That will ruin your day. And if that thing hits you, The only way to beat that thing is to lower its attack point with the love spell. Nothing else is going to stop it. Its defense is, I think, 6. Its attack power is 12, and it poisons you if it touches you. Yes, you'll
So
get
on that one, you don't want to run from it, right? Because it has a chance to hit you as you run away. You probably want to throw gold at that one, right?
throw gold at it, which is the escape mechanism built into the
Right.
game. By the way, the amount of gold is based on a sliding scale of the difficulty of the monster. So it's going to cost you a lot. You're going to lose maybe 30, 40, 50% of what you've got in your pocket just to run away from it. But here's another problem when dealing with this particular creature. If you run, you may take 1 hit, but if you stay, you could take 4 hits.
Right.
You may think you can beat it, but is the loss of resources fighting it worth it?
Right.
I don't know. It may not be worth it. So you have to decide, is fighting this creature worth it? Or is it better to not fight this creature? I would have to say, most of the time, you're going to want to run. It's going to hurt to run, but it's better to run and live and fight another day than to stay and fight and be very disappointed about 4 turns later.
Well, so I mean, look, you can't run from everything, right? But you're saying if it's something that is an ogre, or if it's something that has a poison feature to it, those are the things that you should be running from. Fight the
Oh,
other stuff, but things that involve poison, run from those.
run, because you're taking damage and you have to use antidote to cure. No class can cure itself of poison. And if you're the rogue, if you're a new player and you're playing the rogue and really getting good and comfortable with the rogue, try not to deal with anything that poisons you, because the rogue's only weakness is poison. That is the only thing that can prevent you from beating the game as a rogue, is poison, because you don't get self-restorative magic. And remember, with the rogue, the final progression point 50, you can simply sell your ring of life, because your ring of life cannot be used in the final battle. It's simply just 200 treasure to be made. One of the little pro tips I'll drop for you all, as all of you know, aka for something I always talk about in NewDeath Gaming, pro tip: learn what gets you the most money in Path of Adventure on your final day, because you have an opportunity to sell things that are not useful. The rogue is the only class that you can sell its ring and make money and not hurt yourself on the final level of Path of Adventure, because you can't use the Ring of Life anymore.
Right, because there's not another day that progresses, so
Another
you
day.
can-
Nope.
you can't get healed. Now, as you move down the path, you will have opportunities to step off the path and go explore caves, for example. Do you recommend always doing that? Always explore the caves and for the potential of the gear that's in those, or how do you deal with or contemplate the things that are stepping off the path?
So there, yeah, that's a very great question. So these instances are randomly generated, and they are designed to tempt you, because Jordin is a genius and he likes to write these really interesting, very tangy, delicious little scenarios, but they're all a trap. So remember, Path of Adventure, you have agreed voluntarily, consensually, to walk down a path of traps. How many traps do you want to walk down? You've got to know how many traps you can sustain. Now, the rogue can sustain a lot of traps because it self heals. It doesn't need healing potions. And if you're buying healing potions as a rogue, you're wasting your money. You only need them for the final level. Rogues self heal. But if you're the ring bearer, you need every healing potion you can get your hands on, or you die. And if you're the wizard, you need every mana potion, because it makes you super brokenly powerful. And if you're the thief, you need everything. So the thing is, though, you got to know when to say when. Like, let's say you're halfway through the progression point, you're at progression point 30. You're about to fight the second pathway mini boss. This is like, it could be the not the Goblin Chief, it could be there's a name for it. It's a big giant guy. I can't think of its particular name right now, but there are
Orc,
3.
ogre,
There's the I think it's the ogre.
giant
Yeah,
troll.
Troll, yeah. There's no ogre. The ogre is actually not any of the progression boss. It's a side boss that's super broken. So it's you got it correct. It's the troll, it's the gargoyle, or it is the there's one more gargoyle, troll, and there is one more that I can't think of. They're all either okay. By the way, the progression bosses are all versions of the final boss. So just like there's the Hydra, there's the gargoyle. It's very fast. Just like the giant, there's the troll. So these are actually mirrors of what you'll deal with on the final level. And then there is a medium creature who is basically the dragon, a balanced creature for the middle progression bosses. So they're all basically versions. Same thing with the goblin chief, the uh, king cobra, and the stoneman. The stoneman represents the giant because it's heavy defense, low attack. The king cobra represents the hydra, high speed but low defense. And the goblin chief represents the dragon. It has good medium stats, a little bit of defense, a little bit of attack, a little bit of speed, a little bit of everything. So it's balance. So the way Jordin has so expertly balanced everything, everything is a training mission for the final level. So the question you were asking me was more like what you should prepare or what should you? Oh, you were talking about
When you're stepping off the path to like the caves,
right.
do you always go for those, or do you always avoid them, or do you decide based off of the information they give you right at the beginning whether it's worth going into that cave?
Yes. So you gotta definitely weigh your mathematics on it. So if you're really hurting for supplies, you don't get to stop. You got to keep going. Remember, you have an option. That's something you don't often get in games. You get an option. It's a choice game. So make a choice. You need to decide if it's worth stopping. Now, if you have nothing, if your bags are pretty empty, then you're not going to beat the game anyway if you don't stop off and try to fill yourselves up with some artifacts. You've got to get spells, you've got to get consumables, you've got to pick up weapons, and you've got to get experience. You must stop to build your character up. So your levels are determined by how many times you kill monsters. So kill the cheapest, weakest monsters as often as possible. Stay away from the strongest, most powerful monsters because guess what? They only give you 2 experience points. Even the ogre only gives 2 experience points, but the rat gives 2 experience points. So fight the weakest monsters and collect their treasure. It's how you beat the game. You're just going to want to pick on the weakest challenges. So you get 4 different things you get. There are dungeons, there are ruins, there are a private citizen who asks you for help, like a cabin in the woods, and or there is a monk asking you to help them deal with a particular ritual summon that they've done ill-advisedly. So you have all these special missions. Now, you're given an item that you're offered. For instance, the woman who is in the cabin in the woods, which is kind of a play on the cabin in the woods horror film, um, which is kind of like go into my cabin. There's a monster chasing you around. It's a whole reference to the whole Friday the 13th kind of thing, which is really cheeky. And if you beat that monster, I will give you this little treasure, and then you can turn on a hot tub and we can hang out. Or you can get the monk who says, Grand Adventurer, typical RPG style NPC, who will say, we had this summon and we've done the whole Wong thing from Marvel Studios and we've summoned the wrong creature to this multiverse. We need to get rid of it now. In that case, he's going to also offer you a treasure. Now, you can choose to take that treasure and go. You don't get the treasure till you beat the creature, but you can go in, see if it's something you want to fight because you don't know. It doesn't tell you until you fight it. But once you see what it is, you can actually just escape out. But you're going to get hit if you're slow. Most of the time, people don't make speed builds, so they don't realize this dynamic. But you can actually go into most of these little challenges, these offers, I call them offers. You can go in, take a little hit, and then you can run out. If it's like a ghost and you're not really built to deal with a ghost, because ghosts have very special properties, you can go, oh, I really want that Sword of Flames, but I also don't want to lose my entire character. This run's been really good. This is not the time to collapse. Or you can get what we call a ruins or dungeon. Now, these are tricky. So, a ruin is the best because you don't have to choose any spot. It's a choice based game at that point. However, the dungeon, there's one path in and there's one path out. So, think of the dungeon as the path of adventure. But the beauty of the dungeon is you are sometimes, and it is about 25%, you're offered a separate side exit out. And that's where it gets really fun, that you can go out a separate direction. You don't have to go back out the way you came in. So that you have a 25% chance of being offered a secret way out. It's still full of danger and traps, but it also has opportunities for more treasure.
Right. Um, so when you are going through and you are, getting your gear and things like that, is there, you know, certain things that you always make sure that you have on hand, or do you always have a backup weapon or backup shield to protect yourself? Because if I remember this, your protective things like shield, you get so many hits before that shield is kind of no longer usable, right?
Correct. You start off with new, you get 2 hits, and it drops from new to good condition. You get 2 hits on good, and it drops to fair. And then you get 2 hits on fair, it drops to I do believe it is one more status, and then
Worn.
finally
Is it worn?
warn, something like to that effect. Correct. And then the final thing is breaking. So you get 2 hits on breaking, and then it breaks. When you get really good at the game, you could just wear everything down to its second breaking point. By that point, you need to either have a sharpening stone or you just need to not use it. In the case of an enchanted weapon, you're going to want to use every enchanted weapon down to its breaking point. Some people might say that's risky, but actually, since you're not going to want to use an enchanted weapon, use it up early. And remember, it just becomes a stat, basically. You're basically carrying around an artifact that's in your weapon slot. You don't want to ever break an enchanted weapon. It's too valuable. And there's only less than a 5% chance of gaining an enchanted weapon. I've done the math.
I'm
And
sure there's spreadsheets. Yes, I'm sure you
done
have.
it with spreadsheets. The chance of getting, by the way, the chance of getting a curse weapon is 10%. It's very common. You'll get them all the time. And I have this little weird thing. I do these little weird homebrewed achievements. One of my homebrewed achievements is to get 4 enchanted weapons at the same time or 4 curse weapons at the same time. Try that. That's really hard. It's really fun though.
I'm just trying to beat the game.
I know. I like it.
I have not got up to ring bearer and things like that. Speaking of that, so and you mentioned it a little bit with the rogue. The rogue, its kind of special feature of it is that every day, it does some healing of the rogue. So as you kind of mentioned, you don't have to use potions as much because you're kind of healing every day. When you open up the warrior path, and now you're the warrior. You don't heal every day, but you have a different attribute. So can you kind of walk through, what does the warrior have? What does the assassin have? The thief, the wizard, the ring bearer. What are the special attributes you get at the, when you're going down the path for each one of those?
Definitely. So when you get to the warrior, you unlock a ring called the Ring of Brawn. And you're never going to want to sell this ring. It is not like the rogue where you can sell the Ring of Life because it's useless after that day. No, the Ring of Brawn, the most
Yeah, yeah.
powerful.
Well, you want to sell it at the end of the path.
No, the Ring of Brawn, you're going to never sell
No, no,
because
no. The first one, the ring
oh,
of
the
life
Ring
for the
of,
rogue.
yeah, just sell it. The minute you get past the Castle of Wonder, you have that little conversation with the Witch Queen. You're going to want to sell the Ring of Life. I know it sounds sacrilegious, but just sell it because it's meaningless. It doesn't work anymore. The Ring of Life only works when you're on the day-to-day path. Every day, the ring bearer receives life based on how much life the ring bearer, excuse me, sorry about that, folks. The rogue receives life based on how many hit points it has. If the rogue has 20 hit points, it receives basically, it gets 10% in hit points for its life. So you have 30 hit points as a rogue, you get +3 healing every day on the path. If you have 20, you get +2. So, folks, it scales. So depending on how many hit points you have as a rogue, that's how many hit points you receive each day on the path. So no healing potions are required for the rogue. Not if you're really getting good at it, you don't need them. Maybe for the last boss if you get to a really rough spot. So the warrior has the Ring of Brawn. Every fourth hit, your damage is doubled. Think about that. Every fourth hit, it doesn't matter. You could hit with like 1 point of damage, and on your fourth hit, you break out your biggest, strongest weapon. And if you have the adequate amount of speed, you get double damage on that strike. You can time everything to that fourth hit. And that is the Ring of Brawn effect. The game
Does that
says,
carry over? Like, let's say you have an enemy and you kill it in 3 strikes. Is the fourth or the first strike of your next enemy the fourth, or does it restart? So it has to be.
nope, it carries over. You're correct. It carries over. And that's the tricky part. You need to count it. So when I first started playing, I would keep these 4 smooth dice in my a little tiny accessible like jar. And I would move every time I hit a creature with the warrior. And this is when I was a newly blind, visually impaired person. This is one of the first games I ever played as a blind, visually impaired content creator. I would move over one of these little magic dice. They're these really cool little blood-stained dice I have. And I would move them over from one jar to the other. Once that jar had 3, I knew my next hit was going to be the Ring of Brawn effect. So I'd make sure if it wasn't a monster I wanted that effect to go off on, I would just run from the battle. But I was that much of a micromanager back then. So I really only wanted my Ring of Brawn effect to go off on the most powerful creature I could use it on. But yes, it carries over, definitely. And you're going to want to use that effect because there are certain weird things, including the Basilisk Fang, which is the weapon I was trying to think of you get as the assassin. There is a way to kill every single boss in this game with one attack. And it has something to do with the Warrior's Ring of Brawn. It doubles it doubles your entire attack power. So you could actually take a bunch of mushrooms, throw the Basilisk Fang into your attack, wait for the Ring of Brawn to reach its 4th attack, make sure you hit, and guess what? You're doing 120 points of damage, which is one of the achievements I have in my homebrewed achievements that I've created, is to kill every final boss with one attack, which
Let
can be
me
done.
let me ask you this question. So uh, I'm fighting an enemy and I hit it, I hit it, I hit it, I miss. Does the miss count where you would
Nope,
be doubling the miss? So my 5th attack, which is my 4th hit, that's what's going to double.
correct.
Okay.
And
All right.
you plan for it every step of the way. Make sure if you're fighting a special boss, don't use you if you have like 1 point of durability left on your best weapon, like a battle axe or something, and you've got the adequate amount of speed to make it work and hit. If you've got a very good percentage chance to hit with that weapon, don't waste it unless you know your Ring of Brawn effect is going to go off. Because now you've made that weapon so broken, so powerful.
All right. So you go on from the warrior to the assassin.
So the assassin is a big change from the warrior. You don't have any big hits anymore, but you start off with an extra point in attack. So you get that really nice extra damage. You got that kind of roguey stealthiness. So you get the Ring of Shadows, or I want to say it's Ring of Shadows,
Yeah.
which means you get to attack first on every fight, unless, and this is something you're going to be caught off guard with if you're not familiar with it, if the monster you're fighting has, well, I would say it's about a 15% chance of getting to attack you first, no matter what. It doesn't matter if you are the assassin. If the monster wants to attack you first, it has a very small percentage chance of getting to have something called eagerness. So if the monster you're fighting gets to be eager, it gets to attack you first no matter what. It's a really weird built-in mechanic that I love because it's fair. You get to attack first, so it gets to attack first once in a while. I would say it's about a 10 to 15% chance. Now, if it does get to go first, then you're next. But if that doesn't go off, which it doesn't very often, you get to go first no matter what as the assassin, which, by the way, make some amazing combos. So this game has what we call a flee factor built in. Every monster will flee if you do more than 75% damage to it with one hit. It will trigger its flee mechanism, which is something from 5th edition, which has always been in the game. It's a optional rule that dungeon masters will sometimes use. It's designed to create realism. For instance, if you were fighting someone and all of a sudden you got knocked across the room and you're nearly half dead, are you likely to stay and fight? Nah, I think it's time to run. So every monster in Path of Adventure will run if they take more than 75% of their hit points and damage on a single strike. Now, there are monsters that never run. The final boss never runs unless you've depleted its health in a phase, and the progression bosses never run. So they will always fight to the death. However, every other creature, oh, excuse me, and also the monk challenge and the cabin in the wood challenge, they never run. However, every other creature in the game has a mechanism where it will flee. So the assassin has the ability to attack first. And if you plan it correctly, you attack first. And if you do sufficient enough damage, you can either kill them or force their flee mechanism to come into effect. Not to mention the fact that since you're attacking first, you can set up with Smoke Bomb, your most powerful accessory. Smoke Bomb allows you to attack twice. So guess what? You get to attack twice. You have 2 chances to invoke their flee mechanism. So think about that power. And that's what makes the assassin so broken. They get an automatic +1 attack as a bonus. But here's the thing. The assassin never quite starts off with the best defensive equipment. So when you play the assassin, understand you've got to play a little risky because you don't have the defense of the warrior. You don't have the defense of the rogue with its healing capability.
So do you
So
want to add speed to that? So, less likely chance that you're going to get hit.
yes, but here's the problem. You need defense. You do not start off with any defense. The assassin is the first class that doesn't get a free point in defense. The rogue gets, I do believe, 1 or 2 points in defense. The rogue gets a point in, I think, every single statistic: defense, attack, and speed. Assassin gets 2 points in attack, and that's it. No points in defense, no points in speed. The assassin needs everything, but the assassin also has to be aware of some factors. For instance, the Witch Queen might say, I need you to put 3 points in one particular attribute. Well, guess what? You have 2 points in attack. You better drop that last point in attack because she's going to give you that particular challenge 34 to 40% of the time. She usually gives you that. Have 3 points in one particular attribute. I've already done the math on it, folks. You can go and do it yourself and you'll find the same. So yeah, the assassin needs everything. It needs speed first. It needs defense second. And it also needs a lot of attack. So yeah, you're correct.
All right. So you go from the assassin to the wizard.
Yes, the wizard. And oh boy. So we start off with a really easy. The assassin's a pleasure to play. It's hard to beat, mind you. It isn't weak. It isn't weak, but it is still difficult. By the way, every time, folks, you move up a class, the bosses all get 10% more health. So the King Cobra has only 9 hit points on Rogue, but guess what? It's got 10 for the warrior. It's got 12 for the assassin. It's got 15 for the wizard, and it keeps going up. So remember this. Every time you move up in the class, every monster gets stronger,
Right.
including the last bosses. So yes, you move on to the wizard, and you gain the magical ability of having the ability to attack twice using your special kind of like ring. Your ring allows you to do 2 different things. You always attack twice. It's that Final Fantasy. I don't know if you remember this one character. They had the ability to mimic, basically copy a move. So the wizard has this special ability where it can do everything twice, as long as you don't sell its ring. So you can use 2 spells, and I do believe you're allowed to attack twice. And maybe double check on that. I haven't played in a long time, but I've been playing a lot of Assassin recently. But yeah, so the wizard gets to use spells for sure twice. And this presents some very interesting tricks because I do believe the wizard starts off with the wizard staff. And it also receives a special artifact, which is the wizard's pipe, or it gets they either get the wizard's pipe, one or the other, the wizard's pipe or the other item, which doubles your magic damage. It's very awesome. So you get the wizard staff and you get the wizard's pipe. There's another item, I just can't remember its name. All of these are great because it means if you have the love spell, which lowers an enemy's attack, it's not 2 anymore, it's 4. If you're doing the lava spell, it's not 3 damage, it's now 6. If you're hitting them with lightning, it's not 4 lightning damage, it's now 8. And here's the thing, there are 2 of these wizard pipe accessory artifacts, which means you can bring lightning all the way up to 16. You can bring the love spell all the way up to a -8 to their attack. Now, then you're talking, you've got power. Right. you're talking pretty broken. Throw in a couple of mana pots, nothing can stop you in the entire game.
Then after that's the thief.
Yes, and now get ready to be disappointed. So sad face emoji. You are now the weakest character in the entire game, the thief. You have no special abilities. You get no attribute bonuses. Your only special ability is the Thieves Ring, which is not its proper name. It simply means all your treasure doubles every day. But don't be dismayed. The Ring of the Thief's property is its power. You are basically going to want to be the greediest, self-serving adventurer in the entire world because you are simply in it to beat the game and get the highest score possible because you have no special abilities. You don't get to attack first. You don't heal. You have no attribute increases.
With doubling your gold or treasure every day, isn't that more buy your way? So when you hit the merchant and you can buy gear, that's what you're really doing. You're augmenting the fact that you have no specials with the gear that you're able to buy because you have all this gold to buy it.
Yes, in theory. But here's what really happens. You don't have enough because you have to spend gold. Your starting equipment, you get you get the Thieves Blade, which allows you to unlock treasure chests. That's it. The rest of your gear is trash. And you're dealing with the regular RNG that everyone deals with. So you can get a rusty blade, a thieves blade, and nothing. You might get like a health potion or a mana potion. But the thing is, by the time you get to the thief, you're an expert at deciding what to do. You really know at that point what you need to do. You know when you're going to have a dead run that ends at level 20. You know when you're going to make it to the end, but not quite have enough to get it to tip over. So by the time you're playing the thief, folks, you're pretty expert at this game. But here's the thing. The thief is so fun because you can literally get to thousands of gold if you know what you're doing. So I played the thief once with 10 hit points. I refused to use an elixir of growth, which is a treasure you get every time you level. I basically sold each one of them at the end of the game where they were worth the most. Let all of those double the next day because you get one more day to double them. So I did this right before I fought the White Sorcerer, not after the Castle of Wonder. This trick does not work on the Castle of Wonder. By the way, just like the Rogue, if you're the thief, just sell your ring after you get past the Castle of Wonder conversation with the Witch Queen. Its ring does not work in the last level because you are no longer moving from day to day. You're in an instance. There are no more days. So just like the Rogue, just sell your ring. However, before you reach the White Sorcerer, you can double and double and double. I think at one point I had 7,000 treasure, but I died. But it was a rush. And it was amazing. So the most I've ever ended the thief with is 6,000 gold. That's my high score. Don't have it on this phone because it was on my Apple iPhone 8. That was my first phone I got from the Department of Rehabilitation. Yeah, they wanted me playing games, right? So that was the first phone I ever had as an iPhone user. And yeah, I got 6,000 points. It was like I said, this is the first real roguelike I've ever played as a blind, visually impaired person. And yes, I would play this game day and night for hours. And so with with the thief, I'm sorry if I'm mixing names. When you're playing the thief, which is really weird because the thief is a rogue, but anyway, I just, apples and oranges. Anyway, if you're playing a thief, you've got to buy everything. So if you're trying to make money, well, forget about it. Because if you don't have a healing potion, you'll never get by the first boss because you're the weakest character in the entire game. The ring bearer is automatically poisoned, which we're going to talk about next, but it's stronger than you. You're the weakest. So that's the thief. It's all about high scores. And you just need to know what you need to buy, and everything else, sell it. I don't care what it is. Magician's gloves, sell it. Antidote, sell it. Anything you get your hands on, sell it. And by the way, I have a metric. If by the first boss you beat them and you kill that boss, and by the way, there's a randomized treasure loot table. So every boss has a chance to award an enormous pile of treasure. That's the exact wording. If the first boss you fight drops an enormous pile of treasure and several weapons, I can guarantee you could probably double that. You're talking about, you could walk away by progression point 20, you could have up to 700 treasure at that point. And at that point, the world's your oyster. Nothing can stop you because every day you double. Next day, it's 1,400. Next day, it's 2,800. It just keeps doubling. So you get the picture? It's broken. So enjoy the thief. They are really one of the most funnest, most difficult characters to play. But when you truly master how doubling works, you're just going to have so much fun showing off your ridiculous final scores. And yeah, please post them to my to my Facebook page because I want to hear how good your score is, and you need to send a screenshot because I don't believe anything unless I have somebody who's sighted read that screenshot. I want to see your final score. I want proof. No quotes. I want proof. So yeah. So and then we come up to, if you want me to, I can talk about the final class. Do I still have you there? Did I lose you? Oops, sorry. I'm still here. You want me to talk about the final class?
The ring bearer?
Yes, the ring bearer. Yes.
Yeah,
so the ring bearer is Jordin Kee's love story to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, or is it? I think it's more than a trilogy. So the ring bearer is Frodo. You carry a ring that poisons you. You may not sell this ring. You may not give this ring away. You may not nullify this ring. There is only one way to nullify this poisonous ring, is to actually find the ring of life, which I've actually found before, and it will make the effect of you losing life nulled. So it will nullify it. Yeah, you can actually do that. If you find the ring of life, you'll lose life, but you'll gain life back. So you lose nothing. So the ring bearer starts off with the marble shield. They also receive the Sword of Flames, one of the best utility weapons, but not by far the strongest weapons in the game. So the ring bearer loses 1 health every day. Think about how bad that is. And also, if you get poisoned, you now lose 2 life every day. And it doesn't stop there. The hits keep on coming. So every monster is at its strongest iteration. Every boss has the most hit points it can have. Even a rat could have 7, 8 hit points. And if you meet a poison creature, it's going to have its maximum hit points. So the ring bearers are likely to face what we call poison bosses. So these are special bosses throughout the world. I do think I found that there are 12 special poison versions of every creature in the game. There's a poison ogre, there's a poison werewolf, there's a poison lizard king, there's a poison troll, there's a poison goblin, there's a poison king cobra, and it just keeps going on. There's a poison goblin chief, there's a poison gargoyle. So the ring bearer deals with all of those things, and you can't fight any of them because you don't have the means to survive those fights and still be able to make it to the end of the game. So the ring bearer is very much Frodo running from everything. You're running from orcs, you're running from spiders, you're being chased by, I don't know what that little character was. You've got all kinds of problems.
Well, for those who are interested, these are all been amazing tips and tricks and how to approach and strategize, through the game. But you have a whole series of playlists of each different type of character as you play through, where you go into even more detail. So I'm going to put that into the show notes for people to, press on that link and, whatever character they're playing, be able to kind of play along with you and get some strategies and ideas. But again, you have an expert here on Path of Adventure. I really would take his advice and the strategies and his approach, because he has beaten the game on every single level and every which way, and knows, he's creating Excel spreadsheets about the game, people. So he knows what he's talking about.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, be sure to check out, what Michael Gray has done on Path of Adventure on his NewDeath Gaming YouTube channel. But he also covers a lot of different other games. It's over 100 different playthroughs that he's done for Swordy Quest, for example. A big person who covers Lost Vault, which is a game that's come out in the last year that he's been covering as well. So a great resource on all the different things that Michael's covering on his NewDeath Gaming channel. So I encourage you all to go to it, but I will specifically send the link to the playlist that has all the Path of Adventure information. And so, Michael, any, parting words, parting advice for people regarding Path of Adventure?
I want to thank you very much, Aaron, for giving me this opportunity to talk about a game that I have an enormous amount of passion for. Jordin Kee is a genius, and I really appreciate your interview series. It is something I look forward to each and every week that it comes up. I wish that everyone would subscribe to you. And
me too.
Everyone, please. Everyone on my channel, NewDeath Gaming, all my number of subscribers, swing over to Aaron and hit sub and click and double tap.
Please.
Please do. You deserve
I really
it.
want to get this attention, because I want to be someone who that they look, when they're doing game accessibility conference and they need somebody. I would love to be a panel person, but I think I need to get some subs up before I end up on people's radar. So please join.
You're there. You are there. What you do is so substantive. It really drives me. It gets me really motivated when I hear the interviews you do, the interviews and the folks that you talk to. It is such a strong kinetic bond. I feel I've never got to hear so much from developers as when you interview them. Trust me, it's an incredible service to our community. And I'd also like to say, for those of you in the mobile accessible games community, I love you folks. You folks are wonderful. Having Aaron Spelker as the one who kind of like facilitates all of this, I think we are very much in rarefied times that accessibility is on the map. It's being spoken of, and we are not just being like delegated to, just mentions, but we're actually being brought up among really like AAA rated titles. We're being mentioned everywhere we go. Being a blind, visually impaired person does not mean that you can't be whatever you set your heart to being. So please, whoever or wherever you are, whatever part of the community you are in, please definitely tune in to Aaron, tune in to Mobile Accessible Games. Swing by my channel if you have time. Have a passion and love for accessible games. And if you're a developer, please give Aaron an interview. Like, I'm looking at some of you know who I'm looking at, you, Camille Roykoski.
Yeah, look, I want to promote accessible games. So yes, you're a developer. I would love to interview you and get the word out about your game. So please reach out. But again, Michael, thank you so much for the time and giving us all your wisdom about Path of Adventure. It's a great, fun game. Lots of replayability, lots of different ways to approach it. So, I suggest everybody, if you haven't played it, give it a look.
Oh, please do. And please do not blame me on your addictions of it. When you get addicted to it, don't get mad at me. I promise you. Listen, it's an amazing game. Thank you, Jordin Kee. I worship you.